Next time you're standing at a train station or watching a powerful locomotive race past a crossing, take a moment to look down. Beneath the massive steel rails and sturdy wooden sleepers, you'll always notice the same thing: stones. Countless rough, gray, jagged stones stretching for miles and miles. It doesn't matter whether you're in India, the United Kingdom, or the United States, those stones are always there. But have you ever wondered why? Why do some of the world's most advanced high-speed trains run on what looks like a simple pile of rocks? Why not just fix the tracks onto a solid concrete surface instead? The answer goes far beyond saving money. It's actually a clever piece of engineering that keeps trains stable and prevents the tracks from sinking into the ground. And surprisingly, the story behind these stones connects modern railways to something far older: ancient sailing ships. Welcome to Curious Explanations. Today, we're revealing the hidden story behind the stones beneath railway tracks. To understand their purpose, we first need to understand problem. A fully loaded train is unbelievably heavy, often weighing millions of pounds when you combine the steel structure and the cargo it carries. If that enormous weight were placed directly on the ground, pressure would crush the soil beneath it. Over time, the tracks would start to sink, shift, bend, and eventually that could cause a dangerous derailment. This is where the stones, technically called track ballast, become essential. Think of a railway track like a layered cake. At the very top are the steel rails. These rails rest on horizontal beams known as sleepers or ties, and those sleepers themselves sit on a thick layer of stones called ballast. The ballast acts like a cushion. Its job is to take the enormous, concentrated weight of the train and spread it across a much wider area. By distributing the pressure, it prevents the ground beneath the track from being crushed or sinking over time. But here's the truly fascinating part: the tracks aren't actually anchored deep into the ground. If you take a closer look, you'll realize that the rails are essentially floating on the stones. They aren't bolted into the earth below. Instead, they stay in place because of the friction between the stones and the sheer weight of the ballast layer itself. This design gives the railway a bit of flexibility. When a powerful train rushes over the tracks, the ballast helps the system absorb vibrations and small movements instead of cracking or snapping under the stress. Now you might be wondering, all right, stones help support the weight, but why these particular stones? If you ever pick up a piece of railway ballast, you'll notice something instantly. These stones are sharp, jagged, and far from pretty. You'll never see smooth, round pebbles used on a railway track, and there's a very important engineering reason behind that. Think about stepping into a pile of ball bearings or smooth marbles. Your feet would slide everywhere, right? That's because smooth stones easily roll over each other. If railway tracks were laid on round rocks like that, the constant vibration and movement from passing trains would cause the stones to roll away, making the tracks unstable and eventually forcing them out of alignment. To prevent this, engineers use crushed stone, typically made from very hard rocks like granite or quartzite. These rocks are broken into sharp, angular pieces. When these jagged stones are packed together, they don't roll, they lock together. Their rough edges grip and press into one another, forming a firm, stable layer that still allows a slight amount of movement when trains pass overhead. This interlocking structure keeps the tracks securely in place and stops it from shifting side to side. Even when a high-speed train rushes around a curve, the ballast helps keep everything steady. But the stones don't just support the weight of the train, they also protect the railway from two of its biggest natural enemies: water and weeds. If tracks were built directly on bare soil, or even a solid concrete slab, heavy rain could quickly create serious problems. Soil would turn into mud and begin to wash away, leaving parts of the track unsupported and dangerously unstable. Concrete also creates another problem: puddles. Water can collect on a solid surface, which increases the chances of the steel rails slowly rusting over time. But a thick bed of stones works very differently. It's naturally porous, almost like a giant drainage system. When rain falls, the water quickly flows through the gaps between the stones and drains away from the track. This keeps the ground beneath the railway dry, stable, and strong. Then there's the problem of weeds. You rarely see wild plants or grass growing in the middle of railway tracks. That's because this deep layer of sharp, rough stones makes it extremely difficult for plants to grow or take root. If weeds were allowed to spread, Instead, their roots could break up the soil underneath and slowly weaken the solid foundation the tracks rely on. So these stones serve several important purposes at once. They support the weight of the train, allow proper drainage during rain, and prevent plants from growing, all in a single, simple system. And before we finish, here's one more surprising detail. Have you ever wondered why these stones are called ballast? The term actually comes from the world of sailing. Centuries ago, when wooden ships traveled across the oceans to pick up cargo, they often sailed empty on the journey out. Without cargo, the ships were too light and unstable, rocking dangerously in the waves. To keep them steady, sailors would load the ship's hold with heavy stones. Those stones were known as ballast. This added weight was known as ballast. When the ships finally reached port to pick up their cargo, the sailors no longer needed those stones, so they would simply unload them onto the shore. Early railway engineers later noticed these large piles of heavy stones sitting near ports. Looking for a cheap and reliable material to stabilize their new railway tracks, they realized those discarded stones were exactly what they needed. They began using the ship's ballast beneath train tracks, and the name ballast stayed with it. So the next time you notice those rough gray stones along a railway line, remember, they're not just random rocks. They're a carefully designed engineering solution, supporting immense weight, draining water efficiently, and preventing weeds from taking over. For more than 200 years, this simple system has helped keep trains and the world moving. This is Simple Things Surprising Histories. If you enjoyed discovering this hidden story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more fascinating stories about the everyday things we often overlook. Thanks for watching.